Intellivision is bringing families back together again with an innovative gaming console called Amico.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all of you retro gamers who've been waiting on the edge of your seat for what feels like an eternity, welcome to the grand unveiling of the Amico that never was. Yes, that's right, we're here to unveil the mystery of why the Amico, that elusive unicorn of the gaming world, never quite made it to the shelves. Well, since I have put out the first Intellivision history video, I've been asked to actually do a video on the Amico. And well, after hearing about how this nonsense was all went down, I feel the need to do a second part to it. So without further ado, I am Professor Retro, and this is part 2 of the rise and fall of Intellivision. Now, before I get into the Amico itself, we need to talk about one person that started the whole thing, and will be mentioned almost all the time for the rest of it. That being Tommy Tallarico. Tommy Tallarico, hailing from Springfield, Massachusetts, the one person who once was a playtester for Virgin Interactive, and soon started working on creating background music for games like the Game Boy version of Prince of Persia. Tommy was also the co-host of Electric Playground and Reviews on the Run from 1997 to 2006. And in 2000, he went on to create Video Games Live, a massive video game orchestra. During his time working in music for Virgin Interactive, he then created Tommy Tallarico Studios in 1994. Now, Tommy isn't immune to disputes with other companies. Y'all remember the oof sound when you died in Roblox? Well, before it was part of that, it was part of a game called Messiah. Well, after claiming he and Joey Kraus created the sound, he disputed the use of it in Roblox in 2019 until Roblox decided to pull this out altogether in 2022. So, before Tommy was president, then president was Keith Robertson. He and Tommy were both parts of Intellivision until Keith's death in 2017, which then made Tommy the new president after he had brought a stake in the company. And in 2018, after he had reformed Intellivision Entertainment, he announced the Intellivision was going to work on a new console, the Intellivision Amico, with an initial release date of October 2020. So let's get into the timeline here. In 2018, Tommy announced the release of a new Intellivision console, one that would be for the non-gamer and for families with simplistic controls. And in December, he had announced the proposed release date of the Amico to be October of 2020, with more details on the project, such as the controllers were to have touchscreen, and the smartphones could be used to connect to the Amico and use as controllers, and that we'd only allow games with the ESRB rating of E10+, which means that he wants all games to be family-friendly, plus the use of an RFD system which would allow new game purchases with credit cards to be easier and allow people to easily share games between consoles. Tommy also said that he had gotten licensing for Atari games to be used for the Amico, as well as a new Earthworm Jim game, which would be exclusive for the Amico. At this point, the price for the console was going to be one of two prices, either $149 or $179. And at a conference in Dubai in 2019, Tommy announced a new office in Dubai and that the Amico was going to be released there at the same time it was going to be released to the rest of the world. Pre-orders was started in April of 2020, and that there were already 10,000 pre-orders of their VIP version of the console, which had one of two designs, either a black and white design or a wood grain one, and that it had already had a total of 5.5 million on Fig, a crowdsourcing website, much like Indiegogo and Kickstarter. However, when COVID hit, Tommy had said that he had to stop taking retail orders because of supply chain issues caused by the pandemic. Soon the official release date was set to October 10th of 2020. Tommy had also stated that they had to make dev kits in Cali by hand instead of having them made in China. Now at this time, if you wanted to get a console for your own, you first had to put down an initial $100 refundable deposit. In May 2020, Jay Aller, a former executive from Microsoft, had joined the Amico team as the company's global marketing director to assist in the launch of the Amico. However, Aller had left the company months later, stating that position and company was not a good fit. Well, after Allard had left the company, Tommy was in an investment call, and when he had stated the name of the members of the team, he had mentioned that Allard was still part of the team. Whoops! This caused the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission to send a letter of clarification asking When exactly did Allard leave the company? The Amico got its first delayed release date set to April 15th of 2021 due to the COVID pandemic. Now, I somewhat understand this delay, since the pandemic did have an effect on a lot of businesses, and Intellivision was not immune to this. And then the Amico was delayed once again to October 10th of 2021 because of what, you guessed it, more supply chain issues. Now, during E3 of 2021, Tommy announced a bunch more games for the Amigo, including a Sesame Street game with actual gameplay. However, in reality, the gameplay was actually from a free web-based game and not from the Amico itself. Ouch. Now, Sam Makovich of Ars Technica noted a few more unmentioned issues with Tommy's presentation, such as some lag between the controller and gameplay, and the photos he used to show people happily playing the Amico were Photoshop stock photos. As well as the hardware was weaker, he compared the console at the time to the tech of smartphones. Now at the time, Tommy had declared to keep the game family-friendly, he played the Moses role and created the Intellivision 10 Commandments of Game Design. So let's have a wonderful look at these. Commandment number 1. Every game must be rated E or E10+. Commandment number 2. Every game must be playable without long or complicated instructions. I have an issue with this, since the original television required people to actually read instructions, such as games like B-17 Bomber. Every game must be balanced to allow players of varying difficulty to have fun. Well, this already was in place well before this. Other games for this use the term rubber banding. For example, if you were to play any Mario Kart game on the Switch, the best power-ups show up to the players in last place, and the worst ones show up for those in front, thus making the game fun for both seasoned players and new players. This practice is nothing new. Every game must be rated 7 out of 10. Or more on the Intellivision's quality control scale. Does this mean that only Tommy can view the games that matter? Every game must cost less than $10. Every game must support the current Intellivision controller. Every game must be 2D or 2.5D, with some exception for 3D games, but no 3D free-roaming world. Every game must be Intellivision exclusive, and every port must be unique in some way. No in-game purchases or DLCs. And lastly, every game must incorporate local multiplayer, couch co-op, and versus mode. Now, Sam of Ars Technica felt that this list was more like Game Design 101 and was not really anything specific to the Amico. Seeing this article, however, Tommy felt it was violating copyright law by using private development info, and attacked for Sam on Twitter, now known as X. However, trying to cover his attacks in case it backfired, he later apologized and then deleted the tweets. And games were then announced to be $20 per game for the physical copy. Hey, what happened to Commandment number 5? And once again, the Amico was, well, you guessed it, delayed in August of 2021 to be released at the end of that year. And it was announced that the reason was another global chip shortage. However, Katu noticed a number of games for the Amico were not really exclusive, but were ports from iOS and Android games. In November of 2021, it was pointed out that the assets for the Amico game Tank Battle were actually taken from the game World of Tanks. Oof. However, Intellivision has stated that they had 6,000 pre-orders. Now, despite the Amico still not being released yet, they had released a collection of physical games for $79 or $149.99 for the collector's edition. I have to ask here, what was the actual purpose of this? Why release games before the console was even released at all? Down as the CEO of Intellivision in February of 2022, which left Phil Adam take over the role. Reason was to better align their resources to face new challenges of commencing for the Amico. And that same year, Intellivision began its fourth round of fundraising since they had not taken any revenue since 2018, and would need more funding to continue beyond July of 2022. Intellivision proposed that $10 million would allow them to continue operating for another 7 to 9 months. They plan to keep the game going for 3 months. They stupidly decided to close it 3 weeks into it, which according to Ars Technica stated that closing that early was a massive red flag. 2022, some of their pre-orders were sadly cancelled, including one via the massive game store GameStop. And in June, they had cut staff and licensed IPs to keep the project viable, yet still planned to launch the Amico. And on July 4th of 2022, it was reported that the Amico trademark was abandoned. However, in July 7th that same year, Intellivision renewed it, but instead of further extending it, they decided to file a new one on June 30th of 2022. Now, I was asked in the comments of the last video if you could still pre-order the console. Well, here's your answer to that: no. Because in November of 2023, Intellivision had announced that due to the lack of funds, they will not be able to produce any console units. But fear not, in order for them to try to secure more funds, they released a mobile version called Amico Home, which allowed you to play some of the titles on your phone for Android and later on iOS. I feel the need that we need to talk about this so-called mobile app. First, this is an Android app, and it was once stated by Tommy himself that any Amigo game could not be played on cell phones. Well, he's technically right, because in order to play any game using the app, you actually have to have 2 or more phones to do so. One acting as a home base and the other acting as a controller, which means you can't play just a single phone. However, not only do you have to download the core app, but on the other phones connected to it, you have to download a separate app to make them controllers. This totally makes no sense and is totally ridiculous. There you have it, the timeline as I know it of the Amico, from its first announcement to many delays to ultimately never even happening, and more to an absolutely ridiculous mobile app idea. The Intellivision Amico was just a pipe dream that conned many investors out of money with lies, misrepresentation, and mismanaged funds. And with that nonsense, I bid a fond farewell to Intellivision and the Amico console. No one will ever get to try you out. I am Professor Retro, reminding you to keep your controllers plugged in, your consoles turned on, and game on, laugh lots, and until next time, peace out and stay frosty.